Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to the Catch a Turtle project. We are looking at activity 1.2.1 in Project Lead the Way, and we are going to pick up from our last video in this section on adding a countdown to the project, a countdown timer for this game at step 42. So if you haven't already, you can scroll on over to step 42 in Project Lead the Way, and we'll walk through it together. So when we left off, we had just added a way to keep track of the score in the game. In this section on adding a score tracker and displaying a score. Now we're going to add a countdown to make the game even more, engrossing, so that you have a limited amount of time to click the moving turtle as many times as you can. So we're given some sample code to see how a timer can work in a Python turtle environment. I'm going to look at the full screen so you can kind of get a sense of what this looks like. If I run the code, we can see we have just a turtle in the center here, and it is displaying a timer. So how does this work? First of all, the timer is triggered by this event called onTimer that's associated with the window. So if you tell Python to pay attention to the timer event from the window, it will look at that event at the frequency that you set it to. So every time the onTimer is triggered, we're going to execute a function called countdown, which you'll see is defined over here. And how frequently are we going to do that? Every number of milliseconds that is specified here. Yes, browsers monitor time in milliseconds. So if we want to trigger this event every second, which is what we're doing, that's going to be 1,000 milliseconds. So up here, we have defined a variable called counterInterval equals 1,000. That tells the onTimer event to trigger every 1,000 milliseconds or every second. So every second we should see the time clicking down, and we're basically seeing it because we're running the countdown function every second. So you may ask, what is this countdown function? Let's take a look. Over here we can see the countdown function brings in two global variables, right? The global variables are timer, which I see up here, set to 30 seconds. That's how much time we're giving our players. And timer up. That's over here. So timer up is an indication, hey, time's up. You ran out of time, the game is over. So initially, when the user starts playing the game, the time is not up, they just started. So we set timer up to false. Timer up will only be true when the user runs out of time and time is up. So we have our two global variables, right? Timer, which is 30 seconds initially, and timer up, which is initially false. The next thing we're going to do is counter.clear. And you may remember using this clear function when we were writing the score tracker part of the game. This just keeps Python from overwriting the value, the score value, the timer value every second, or every time it updates. Instead, we're going to clear the old value from the display, and we're going to write a new value into the display. So here we are clearing away whatever the counter was displaying before, because we're going to have it to display some new text. Next, we check, is the timer less than or equal to 0? Did we actually run out of time yet? If so, then we're going to write time's up using this font setup that we have already set up here, Arial 20-point font. And we're going to set the timer up variable to be true. We're going to say, okay, yes, time is in fact up. So if the timer is greater than 0, then we're going to keep counting down. We're going to have the counter turtle display the word timer and how many seconds are left in the timer, or what is the timer variable value. And after we do that, we're going to decrement the timer variable. What does decrement mean, you ask? I bet you know. It means to subtract from something. Typically in computer programming, we are subtracting 1 from our variable. So timer minus equals 1 is the same as saying timer equals timer minus 1. It helps us count down. Finally, counter is going to get screen on timer, countdown, counter interval. Does this look familiar? It looks a lot like this event, right? This is just telling it to keep counting down every 1,000 milliseconds or for another 1,000 milliseconds. So now that we have seen the breakdown of this code from Project Lead the Way, let's go back into our steps. And you're going to laugh because there's a lot of, Project Lead the Way is giving us a lot of steps that we can paste into our code. So first, we're going to copy the countdown variables and the countdown writer turtle setup into the appropriate sections of our code. As you remember, our code has these this template that we started with. So the countdown variables, which are over here, they're going to go into the section for configuration, right? Where all of our other variables are. So let's go ahead and grab them. I'm going to copy the countdown variables. I'm using Control-C to copy. I'm going to go to my Catch a Turtle file, or my Catch a Turtle project in CodeHS, and under game configuration, I'm going to use the Enter key here at the end of line 10 to drop down a line and use Control-V to paste what I just copied from Project Lead the Way. If you noticed, we now have a double of the font setup variable. You're right, let's delete that. We don't need that twice. We already had that code from using the font setup on the score. By the way, it shows what it's going to look like. There's where I'm putting my timer. So we have copied our variables here. What is next? Also, copy the countdown writer turtle setup into the appropriate section of our code. So here we go. Here's our countdown writer turtle. And what is the appropriate section of our code? I'm copying and I'm going to paste over here where we are initializing turtles. So this was the turtle that we're clicking. Try. Score writer is of course showing the score. And now we're going to have a new turtle for the counter. So much like the score writer, I'm going to have our counter pick the pen up so that when it moves, it doesn't leave a line around the board. And I'm also going to have it go to a special place on the screen. Not the same place as the score writer, of course. I'm going to have to change my variables. I think, so the -180 is what put the score on the left side of the screen. I want my timer on the right side of the screen. So I need a positive value in the X place. I think I'm going to choose something like, I'll choose maybe 150. Let's see how that goes. And I think I can just run it at this point, right? As you did with the score writer, add code to move the counter to the location you identified in your notebook. Just did that. Run your code, does counter move to the location you expected? Let's see. I'm going to run. There's my score. Oh gosh, look at that. Did you catch my bug? This should be counter, not score writer. Let's run it again. Okay, so now I have two turtles. This is going to be for the score, this is going to be for the counter. So I think that should be a good place. If I need to, I can change my counter position later. Copy the countdown function and add it to the game functions section of your code. So let me get my countdown function. It starts with DEF for defining a function. And I'm going to copy lines 14 through 23. Control C. I'm copying it into the game functions section of my code, right? Here's a hint. Don't put it in last. I would put it in maybe the third place. And why am I not putting it last? The last thing that we have here is spot clicked. And that kind of is starting to call the other functions. You always want to declare the functions that you're using before you get to actually call them. So I guess spot clicked is not going to call the countdown, but it just makes sense to me to put spot clicked last because it does refer to some of the other functions. All right, where were we? We just copied the countdown function. Now we're going to copy the on timer event for the screen and add it to the events section of our code. So that is down here, the on timer event. I'm going to triple click to select the line. Oh, whoops. Control C to copy. And let's go to Control V to paste in Code.hs. Alrighty. So we were on, I think, yeah, we just did 47. Step 48, to save yourself time while testing the new code, change the timer variable from 30 seconds to just 5 seconds. Oh yeah, okay, that way we'll see what happens when it counts down all the way. So I'm changing the timer on line 11 from 30 down to 5. That way our game will just end a little bit quickly so we can really test it quickly. So we have, all right, we have a score going. I think I'm not very happy with the position of the timer because it is so far, I can't see how much time is left. It's too far to the right. So let me see, where do I change that position? I have to go to my counter turtle, change the go to. I need to change this 150, the X value, to something that'll put my turtle maybe around here. So let me try about 100. How about that? Let's run this again and see how 100 looks. Okay, now I can see how much time I have. I don't quite see the end of this word here. It's supposed to say time's up. So I think I'm going to go down, let's say to 75. Let me try this again. My turtles are in place. Scoring some points. The timer runs out and the time is up. Okay, now I can see everything. I think that's a better position. So I'm going to keep the 75. One thing you may have noticed is we have these turtles here that we don't necessarily need. Let's see what happens if we take score writer dot hide turtle. Would that hide that turtle and just show the score? Oh, I do. I see the number. And I don't see the turtle. I kind of like the way that works. I think I'm going to try that with my counter also. Counter.hide turtle. And let's see what happens when I do that. I think I have to run the code again. That looks better, I think. I'm going to keep it that way. Okay, So it looks like things are working. Are there any other suggestions here in Project Lead the Way? Copy the on timer. We did that. We did that. Notice the timer runs out of time, but the game still continues to run. This is because the game is not checking if the timer runs out. You copied a variable called timer up into your code. In the countdown function, timer up will change to a true once the timer runs out. Now, all you have to do is set up an if statement that checks the timer up condition. The pseudocode looks like this. In function spot click, get timer up. If timer up is false, update the score and change the turtle position. Otherwise, hide the turtle. I think I'm going to leave that for you to do on your own. I think you've got this. You know that you have to put this code in the spot clicked function, right? So it would be somewhere in here, spot clicked. And when it says get timer up, that means you need to bring in the global variable timer up, right? So that is this one. And you're going to do something like we did over here, global score, where we brought the score variable into update score. In spot clicked, you're going to need a line global timer up so that we know that you're bringing that global variable into the function. And then you can go ahead and set up your if statement and implement this code. I think you've got this. Congratulations on making it this far. You had a lot of perseverance, had a lot of tenacity. You should be really proud of yourself, and good luck with the rest of the project.